Mike, turn your games down.
Hi, we're booking another comic episode of Games My Mom Found. I am Mike Albertin, and who's wearing a red robe with me tonight?
It is the Emperor's Preferred, Peter Bingham-Pankratz.
And where can people find you at, Peter?
Well, I've written a book. I've written several books, but the first one in the trilogy I've written is called The Fifth Civilization, and you can find it on Amazon for Kindle or paperback.
And the link in the show notes. So it'll be there.
And we are here.
It fits with the Star Wars theme.
Right.
I mean, they do have sci-fi weapons, from what I read. I need to finish, but from what I read.
They do have sci-fi weapons, it's true.
And we're here to talk about Star Wars Crimson Empire, which is a comic that came out by Dark Horse back in 1997 and finished in 98. 6-issue miniseries.
Yeah, it's one of the Star Wars 90s comics, one of those revival of the era when they were just expanding the EU.
You've been talking about this one for a while. We've been meaning to get it on the show.
Yeah.
Like back when we did the Dark Empire, Shadows of the Empire, and all that stuff. And so I've always been curious to this because as a kid, I was a big fan of the Royal Guard.
Right.
Except this Royal Guard is way cooler than the Royal Guards that I got to see in my movie, Return of the Jedi. So
we had them in one movie, yes.
I actually, somewhere, hopefully in my parents' house, I still have one of the original figures of Royal Guards from the 80s. So I went and bought it at some toy swap or somewhere I bought it. My mom bought it for me for a couple bucks or so.
Right.
So I had that figure, open and everything. But just my favorite figure. I just love the Royal Guard for some stupid reason.
Well, they look so cool. They're like, they have the red uniforms and the black eye slits, and I think they help their aura is helped in the movie when they just kind of stand silently and don't do anything. And you're like, those guys could be really badass, but you never see them like fail like a stormtrooper, so they still have their mystique. I mean,
supposedly from what I was reading, this story was actually supposed to be like they wanted to include it closer to when the movie came out, but then it sat around for a decade.
Oh, interesting.
There was something about that I read that he wanted to do something with it, but it just didn't happen. And they just sat on it, and then it finally, I think this comes out, I think, or ended right before Phantom Menace, or somewhere around there. Yeah,
this was the pre-prequel, like, EU. So, like, from the early 90s to the late 90s, before the prequels kind of upended thing. But yeah, it was like an interesting period in Star Wars history when they didn't quite explain the backstory, so they were focused on explaining what happened after Return of the Jedi. And that's, I think, the majority of the stories in that period were, like, post-Return of the Jedi.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I like this idea. I like it, like, when the first issue starts off, of course, you have, text scrolling, except in this case, you have a book. So but you have the text kind of explaining what happened, what's going on. Like, this takes place after the Dark Empire and all those books where Palpatine was killed again.
Yes, before there was Rise of Skywalker, there was Dark Empire, where somehow Palpatine returned. But he had clones. And so it kind of opens with a scroll that says, all the clones have been killed, and the Empire's in chaos once again, thinking, like, who is there going to be our leader? And this mysterious man named Karner Jax has taken over the Imperial Council, so he's kind of controlling the Empire now. Which
I like that, because that makes perfect sense, that other people, would splinter within the organization after the Empire and keep taking over. Like, I mean, you have Thrawn that's in charge for a while, and then at this point, Thrawn already would have been killed.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes perfect sense to have this, like, this story happens. I couldn't find it. I didn't look hard enough, but I didn't see a timeline of how long this takes place after Return of the Jedi.
I'm pretty sure, if I remember, I could look it up, but I think it's like maybe 5 or 6 years after Return of the Jedi. Probably 6 years.
It's 11 ABY.
Yeah, that's probably 5 or 6.
So Battle of Yavin, 11 years. Something like that.
Yeah.
I can't remember my Star Wars timeline.
It's been a couple years. Like, so Han, our heroes who, barely feature in this book.
They're not even in this book.
I think they're in like a flashback. You might see their faces like, the rebels or the Jedi killed all the Imperial guards. And you might see Luke's face like in shadow or something.
You don't even see his face. You just see him holding a lightsaber and some other guy holding a lightsaber. I could not remember at first what it was. But I'm like, oh, yeah, it's from that Empire's End crap.
So, exactly, yeah. It mentioned the book with hideous drawings in it. Hideous illustrations.
Yeah. This was fine. I mean, this also starts off, it gets your attention immediately, where after the text scroll, you have stormtroopers running to their death, and then they get booby-trapped.
Right, yeah. It starts off with a bunch of action, and he's like, what's going on? Who are they trying to find? Because they're trying to find somebody.
So I thought this was going to be a Jedi, because you see this guy in a cloak walking. I was thinking it was Luke. He goes to some bar, and then people start talking shit, and then all of a sudden, I'm like, something's going to happen. I was expecting a lightsaber, and I was a little surprised when all of a sudden the guy just pulls out some kind of bladed weapon and just starts cutting the hell out of people.
Yeah. And he gives him a chance. He's like, don't bother me and I won't kill you. And they're like, oh, yeah, I'm going to keep bothering you. And that's their greatest mistake. They don't last too long. Yeah, it's like a double-bladed weapon that, if you look at the cover of one of these issues, you'll see that, that's the Imperial Guard staff. But, when you're just reading it, you probably don't know. If you're reading it for the first time, you don't know what that is. You just had a big blade.
No, and I forgot to mention the first cover of this. This grabs me.
It's got, if I'm looking at the same one, it's got the Imperial Guards and like a burning Imperial symbol in the background. Yeah, that's great. Who wouldn't read that? It is
so damn cool.
Yeah.
And for a while, I kept going to toy swaps, and somebody kept trying to sell this figure, and they had that cover on the box, and it was the figure on the cover.
Right.
And I kept looking at it like, no, I don't buy figures that much. And now I'm like,
now you wish you had.
Kinda.
Well, see, this is a very interesting era of Star Wars because they would sell toys based on comics and books. And they're like, this character was only in a comic book, but here's a toy of him. Or this character was Dash Rendar. Here's a toy of him. Read more to find out. Go to your local library and find out about Dash Rendar.
Or play the wonderful game.
Right.
It might not have aged that great. But yeah, seeing him, cover. The way he murders all the stormtroopers and everything with that, and then you have like this random spy guy who's like, oh, come with us. And it does a good job of eluding. Like, you then see a Star Destroyer, and you end up seeing a guy who looks like Vader, who kind of looks like Palpatine, in a black robe, but with a like Royal Guard type mask on.
He's a proto Kylo Ren, is how I think.
Oh, okay. So can he use the Force?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Okay. It heavily implies that, or at least I assume that the Force users, the Imperial Guards, were somewhat Force attuned. I'll have to refresh my memory. Having just read it, I think it mentions that at some point in there. But clearly they have skills above the average, guard.
Oh,
but they don't have the abilities of Vader or the Emperor. Like, they're at a lower level of Force using. So they're not a Jedi or Sith or anything like that. But the way I saw it was that he's kind of wearing his mask of the old days, kind of like Kylo Ren did in the sequels. Kind of like, oh, I'm hiding my identity because it's all of the vogue and all the rage. And maybe I'm just holding on to something from the past. Because there's no reason he has to wear this mask.
I'm going to say it here. This guy's cooler than Kylo Ren.
He doesn't have the Adam Driver hair. However, he does have a big black cloak. And he's kind of very vicious. He's very vicious.
Oh, he's a good, makeshift emperor.
Right.
Because you get to see how evil he is. You get to see how ruthless he is throughout this comic. Like, he's a good villain for this. Like, I mean, he does use the Force, as I was rethinking of things. Things happen in the last issue where you see him use the Force. But, in here you have a scene with, some little ball that I guess he picked up and then breaks with his mind.
Right.
But in the non-canon, well, at the time also would have been canon, but years later, the Star Wars Force Unleashed stuff had that the Royal Guard or some of the Royal Guard were Jedis that were then transferred and, mistreated and tortured and became, Dark Force users.
Oh, I didn't know that. Interesting.
I think there's something like that in the Force Unleashed. Because I know you fight at least in, I think maybe in 2, or you fight people like that was a thing at the time. Again, no longer canon, but it was at one time.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it actually kind of is. You have the Sith Inquisitors. You just have a lot less of them than what Legends had. Legends had fucking ton of people. Unlike now in the canon, you have a lot less.
Yeah.
But you're here right there.
For the purpose of the plot, you get a Force user if the plot needs a Force user.
Yeah, and I'm okay that this book. There's no Jedi really in this book. I'm okay with that.
And here's the thing. And here's another thing I like about it. It's one of the rare books that doesn't focus on the Skywalkers or their assorted people. Like, it's just random Imperials.
Yeah, I mean, it's just and Rebels. I mean, or the New Republic at this point. Like, you have this. When you're first introduced to the cloaked figure, he goes to some hideout, and then you see his face is scarred, and then you have a flashback of him talking about how the Royal Guards were trained and what they had to. It starts kind of showing how they had to fight.
I'm going to punch back for a moment. You do see Luke and Han. Because he talks about, they do some of the Dark Empire stuff where the hero, his name is Kir Kanos.
Yes.
And he talks about how Oh no, it's Carter Jax is talking about what happened. Is that though the Emperor's physician was persuaded to secretly sabotage Palpatine's clones, and then Luke killed the clones, and you do see Luke killing the clones, and then you see Luke and Han interrogating the physician at one point.
Okay.
There's one brief page of that. So you do see our heroes very briefly. They don't talk, but they're not the main focus.
Okay.
Yeah.
You also get to see Darth Vader doing a jump kick at one point, or like a swing kick in this.
Right, but then we flash back to this planet where Kirkanos is hiding out, and you see his face. Then he talks about he's kind of going to be doing a dialogue. I think he's doing like an internal monologue, like "Let's remember my time back in the training," which I think is the best part of the book.
It is. I really like seeing that stuff. I like seeing Vader and like seeing what the Royal Guards went through. Where this is some guy that they've been training for who knows how long, and all of a sudden Vader just cuts off his hand and throws him in a pit.
Right. Yeah. He's like, who's the best among Emperor's like, who's the best among you? And it's like, oh, it's this guy. And Darth Vader, and they're like, oh, you're gonna fight Darth Vader. And Darth Vader just annihilates him.
I mean, I don't think you can beat Vader in the first place.
Well, they were ordered to do it, so they fought as well as they could. And the Emperor even says, "Do your duty, my son."
And then the issue ends with you seeing the Imperials are looking for the guy that killed all the Stormtroopers.
Yeah.
And I like how the second issue, the cover is okay. It has two people dressed in the training garb of the Royal Guards fighting each other with Vader in the background for some reason. It's okay. Nowhere near as popping as that first issue.
Yeah, I can see it. I have a trade paperback,
Nice.
But in the back, as they always do, they always put like the 6-issue covers in the back, so I can look at those too.
This is also not. This isn't that expensive if you wanted to buy the single issues, but
no,
it's out of print, obviously, at this point.
There is it's not that expensive either, because you can buy. I think they've done a Legends compilation if you wanted to buy a trade.
Yeah, they have a giant trade of it in the Epic collection.
Here's the thing I will say about those. This is just an aside for comics. They shrugged the pages down, because I have the original one from the 90s, and it's bigger type. But for a lot of the collections that they put out through Legends, they shrunk the pages down a little bit. It's annoying. So it's like a certain percentage smaller. I don't know why they did that. They probably wanted to save however X amount of money on paper or whatever, but I don't know. It's just an aside. But
okay, that's annoying though that they did that. I kind of want to buy this first issue. So put that here or there. I like how the second issue starts, because I always like this. The first page of the second issue shows stormtroopers interrogating people to town, essentially just arresting random people. Like I like when you see stormtroopers being evil and that you see why the uprising happened.
Right, exactly.
I mean, the uprising already happened, but just kind of seeing, also there's a different type of stormtroopers. The more
we get some of those later. We get a different type later too, but for now we see regular stormtroopers arresting people. Yeah, and Kirkanos is still in hiding, and his good friend Tem. I'm just looking at his name. Tem Merkin, who's a shifty old guy.
The spy
has revealed the beautiful Mira Sin, a non-fully clothed redhead. And
It just found funny to me because she's like the only female character they couldn't, and they had to put her in like a half dresser and stuff. I'm like, comics.
It's a comic book, and it was at a time when they weren't concerned about that sort of stuff. I think today they would not have her be so obviously sexy, but
no. And I also found it funny because every time I see a Trandoshan, which I'm assuming that's what that guy is, the first thing that pops in my head is Bosk.
Yeah, I thought that too. Yeah,
I'm like, oh, it's a Bosk.
He's a Bosk, and he's green. Was Bosk like brown or something? Brown.
No, he's green.
Is he green?
Yeah, he's green. He just has a yellow outfit, but he's green.
See, the colors mashed together changes everything.
Yeah, the black outfit with the green, it doesn't work as well. That's probably why Bosk had a yellow outfit.
Yeah.
That's why in Dark Forces they all had yellow outfits too.
They're just called Bosks in that game. But in any case, that's beside the point. Yeah, so the Mira Sin, the woman, and we guess we should call her the female interest, is working for the New Republic. She's like the leader of the cell or the New Republic forces on this planet.
Yeah, because it wouldn't be a cell. They're not rebels anymore.
Right. Yeah, it would be a cell, like an operative of the New Republic.
Yeah,
and the Trandoshan is Sish Sadit, and it's a sidekick, and he's kind of there to question her choices, and she's kind of there to trust Kirkanos.
Gotta be the love interest almost.
Right. Yes.
Which I didn't really care for, but It was cool to see New Republic stuff.
Yeah.
Because I don't know much of the what used to be canon of the New Republic. Because I mean, I've only read Dark Empire and Heir to the Empire, and that's all. So it was nice to kind of have another thing to add to my knowledge.
Yeah, it's always good to see how they're doing, and they don't get into the political aspect of it really in this book, but in other EU stuff from this time they did, and it's interesting. But yeah, you can see that the New Republic is kind of like the Rebels. They don't have they don't have a big presence in every world. Like the Imperials are still on some worlds, so they can't be everywhere at once. The New Republic can't be everywhere at once.
Yeah, I mean the Imperials are also pretty fractured at this point too.
Right. Yeah.
Especially with Palpatine being murdered multiple times, and
right,
Thrawn's gone, so like you're missing a lot of Imperials.
Well, yeah, every year you got a new leader who comes across, then he gets killed, and then a new leader comes across, and then they get killed, and then it's got to be tough to be an Imperial at this point.
I mean, that's how the drug cartels are too sometimes. So hey, that's how it works in real life. Exactly. And then you see them take Kirk Hanos back to their base, and then you see the shifty spy guy who told them about Kirk Hanos also is working for the Imperials and telling the Imperials that that guy you want, he's with the rebels.
Mm-hmm.
So I have one small complaint when the woman, what the hell's her name again? Marishina?
Mirith. Yeah.
When she sees the scar on Kirk Hanos' face, she's like, "Oh, it's a lightsaber wound." I'm like, I don't buy that. If you had a lightsaber wound, there'd be just a hole right there, no face. Like, what they do? Just touch him? Because he just has a scar across his face, but it looks like he got slashed by a sword, not by a fucking lightsaber.
Yeah, you'd have to be at the very edge. I feel like it could work, but. Doesn't Kylo Ren have the scar in the same place? Isn't that from a lightsaber? I have to watch.
I cannot remember.
I think he might, honestly.
I've only seen those movies once each, I want to say.
I know we'll get to it at some point in this point.
Around the time you're hearing this, we already are starting, so.
Right. So I don't think it's too, because I think the new canon and the old canon established that's fine. So I don't think it's too out of the ordinary.
Okay,
certainly you have to be pretty far from the lightsaber to get scarred and survive.
Yeah, if you're up and close and personal with the lightsaber, that's Qui-Gon Jinn. Didn't work out too well.
Right, yeah. And you have to be a near miss,
I do like where you see a little bit with like the Rebels where somebody's not agreeing with their leader and she ends up pulling a knife on a guy or something because she's protecting Kirk Hanos. Yeah,
there's some weird people who come and say,
kill him, he's an Imperial.
Exactly, yeah. Which is true. Which is a very human thing to do, or alien thing to do.
I do like this flashback where it shows Kirk Hanos kind of reflecting on how he joined the Guard, or became one of the Royal Guard finally after the training. Right. Like two guys go into a room, and he's like, "Okay, you two are next." And he's like, "There's only one opening."
Yeah, we've already filled the first opening. There's only one other one,
which feels like a waste of people. Like you spend all this time training people.
Like you could send them to some other school to guard somebody. I mean, they're like the third and fourth best. Come on,
Nope, gotta have them murdered.
I guess it's supposed to just show how cruel the Empire is. Like, they don't even care. Like, you train these people for years, and then you get them killed to just prove your point.
It does fit the Emperor, though.
Yeah. And, maybe it's not practical. Maybe the Emperor is just doing it for amusement. He's like, good. He wants to see people die for him in front of him.
I mean, he is a very evil character throughout everything you see, and he isn't the smartest.
No.
I mean, okay, he is the smartest in certain things, but I feel like once he becomes Emperor, he gets a lot more lax at times. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, yes, you can't be everywhere, and plus, it's got to be, you got to keep your mind sharp. He's got to do those crossword puzzles or whatever, and so if he's not doing them, yeah, exactly. Plus, he's got this big black suited man who's lumbering around. It's got to probably annoy him all the time. So
yeah, protecting him from everybody and everything.
And, he's no fun to talk to, so he's got to do these little things to amuse himself. So
I could buy that. I doubt Vader's fun to talk to.
No, and the Emperor wants some scintillating conversation. He's not getting it from Darth Vader. So
it was just cool. And then you see the Rebel base gets attacked. You get a cool page where you have some guy yelling outside of an AT-ST for some reason. I mean, I don't think that's the smartest thing to do while you're in combat. Pop open the top of the door, go, attack! Like, don't you have radios?
Yeah, they have all sorts of... So I think this book was... one thing I'll notice, this whole series was affected by the Star Wars Vehicles and Vessels book that came out in the mid-'90s, because a lot of those vehicles from that book are put in here.
Like those tanks that I've never seen before?
I think they're called Juggernauts. They have wheels on them. Yeah. And they were straight from that book. I think they were in one of the other, I think they're maybe an Heir to the Empire, but they were definitely first looked at in that book, and they put them in here. And I'm sure the artist was like, use that book as a reference because there are more of them coming up, more stuff that they use. But I think it's cool because what more do we want to see than weird vehicles in Star Wars? So.
Especially as a guy who you probably had that book, didn't you?
I do. I still have it.
Yes.
But yes, I read it a lot. So I identified, I can look through this book and say, oh, that's from the book. The artist took that picture from the Vehicles and Vessels Guide, etc., etc.
I do love the last panel of this book though, where you just see a random guy dressed in Royal Guard armor, and they're like, and the rebels are just like, what the fuck? Who is that?
Oh yes,
I do like that.
That is a really cool image, and I guess I can tell that's the last because in my book that ends, that's like there's another image on the next page, but. Oh. Do you have the same what? So there's that cool image, and there's the next one where it's a creature and some TIE fighters exploding in the background, shooting cool. Some. There's that. It's what that monster is. That's that monster from Jabba's palace.
Yes, in the
opening
scene. Because when I watched Return of the Jedi last time and I saw it in theaters for the 40th anniversary, I was mansplaining to Tiff. I was like, "See, that wasn't in the original. They added actually like I could tell." And I'm like, "I know. I just wanted to." I'm like, I really like this movie.
There's nothing more nerdy than pointing out the special edition changes.
Oh, there are plenty. Because I didn't know if we were watching the special edition or if we were watching the original, theatrical. Just by any chance, by miracle, I'm like, and then as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh yeah, this is a special edition, all right. And then soon I saw the ugly yellow alien. I'm like, here we go.
You were like, where's Lap T Neck? I want to hear that 80s techno tune, but.
I'd rather have that than the yellow alien, the other guy going blah 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 blah. Like, oh fucking A. For those that watch Return of the Jedi, you know what I'm talking about.
Listen to our episode about it. I think we do discuss that.
I'm sure we did. But the cover of the third issue, that's a badass cover.
Yeah, I see it. It's a mountain of stormtroopers with Kir Kanos and the sword right above it. That's great. It's a great cover.
Just murdering them. I mean, and that's what he's doing. Like when you see him in these early pages, you see him fighting. He's just murdering these stormtroopers that have guns with just a freaking a handheld or not a hand. What the word do I want? A melee weapon. That's the word I want.
Yeah, there you go.
I was like, handheld, that don't make sense. It's very cool.
Yeah, it's just this is carnage in this issue, yes.
There's a vehicle on page 2 that looks like a TIE fighter, but took away the wings and gave it wheels. I have never seen that before.
That is also from the Vehicles and Vessels Guide. I think that was from, I forget which novel that was in, but that's from a novel. And then they illustrated it for the guide, and I'm sure that's where they took it from. Like I said, I'm sure the artist was just taking stuff from that book, which would make sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like a TIE tank.
I was like, this is interesting.
Yeah. It's like the Empire is just like, we have this TIE module. Let's just put anything on it. Let's put tanks on it. Let's put a weird sensor on it, whatever.
I do like the war stuff when you see them fighting. Like one part, you see Kir Kanos just shoot a freaking TIE interceptor with a pistol.
Right.
To kill the pilot.
Yeah, it's pretty badass.
It was very cool. And eventually the Imperials retreat, but I really liked it. Like, I thought it was very cool to look at and read. I was definitely intrigued by this.
Yeah, it's great action, and it's great. Like the the Republic's like, who is this guy that's on our side and fighting? And the Imperials are like, how is this one guy taking out all our people? It's insane. What does he say at one point? Does he say like, oh, it took out we lost like 30 men and most of them got taken out by this one guy or something? I don't know. Yeah, he said something like that.
He destroyed them, and the Imperials recognize that he's an Imperial Guard. Like, they're like, wait a second. That's one of our guys.
Exactly, yeah.
So I like that. I like how he even says, he's like, I'm not fighting for you guys. I'm fighting for my own reason.
Right, yeah.
He's like, I don't care about you guys. Like, I'm just protecting myself.
In that way, he's in this book, he doesn't really change too much either from that position. So it's like he's a weird anti-hero where like he's the protagonist. We're supposed to follow him, but like he doesn't do anything heroic, really. No, he's not a hero. I mean, when I finished this book, like he's essentially, he's not really a villain, but I wouldn't even say anti-hero. He's just not a villain. Yeah, he's not a villain, but he murders people, you know?
Well, I guess
He's-
it's hard to say. It's one of those weird ones where it's like you could probably classify him as a villain, but he's not. Well, he's not the antagonist of the story.
He's
also the
he
protagonist.
only really he except for maybe one exception. I think he only really kills bad people. So he's like one of those dark and gritty heroes who like he's not on the good quote. He's on the good side, but his main villain is the people that we already think are villains. So
Yes.
his main fight. So he's I don't know there's so many superheroes like that so
Punisher.
Yeah.
To name a few.
exactly.
There's others that are more villainous than because Punisher's not. Yeah, but close enough for our story.
It's pretty dark for Star Wars. I doubt Disney would do anything like this, where they would have to have he would have to be some redeeming thing or something.
And there's really nothing redeeming about this guy. We'll talk about later.
Exactly.
And then this is when you have the flashback when he tells her about the Royal Guards when Palpatine died. You have that panel of Luke killing some Royal Guards.
Right. Yes. From I believe Empire's End. That's what it was.
That book was bad, but I did. I mean, and that's nice that that's the only thing you have of Luke, and you have the surviving Royal Guard is met up, and then I was confused by this because it talks about how Commander Jax had sent stormtroopers to kill them, and he had killed Palpatine, but didn't Luke kill Palpatine?
So I believe Karner Jax ordered the Emperor's physician to sabotage some clones.
Okay. There were more clones than even what he killed then? Okay.
And so he tells them all that he was the one who betrayed,
He betrayed the Emperor.
I don't know why he'd tell them this. I don't know why. It was.
I think he wants them to join him, right?
Right. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. So
he wants them to join, and then instead of joining, they swear death. They swear to kill him, and then
he is like, okay, he snaps his fingers basically, and like a bunch of stormtroopers come out.
Okay, yeah, and then they try to kill him, and only Kirk Canos escaped.
Yeah, there's a great image of him with the tattered robes.
Yeah,
Karner Jax being like, "Look at me." But yeah, they all like the slaughter of the Mandalorians that may or may not have happened in one episode of the TV show. All these royal guards get gunned down until Karner Jax. Like the draw that they fought to, he's like, one of us has to stay behind and fight off these guys. And so they try to draw lots. And this other guy, Hanad, wins the draw. So he's the one who sacrifices himself to let Kir Kanos escape.
I do like that the coin has the Imperial symbol on it, though.
Yeah, it's
that
great.
Makes sense.
It does make sense, yeah.
It's very cool. I mean, again, it makes you feel for the character. Like, I thought maybe this guy wasn't going to be that bad, which my opinion changed as we continued reading.
Yeah.
And this is also when you see that Karner Jax is then on their way, and he tells the people not to attack the Imperials. Leave him alone and wait till he gets there, because, he knows what Karner Jax can do.
Yeah, exactly.
Not Karner, like Kirk Canos. These names are hard.
They're Star Wars names. Yeah, they have a lot of K's in them, yeah.
And that brings us to issue 4. Yeah. This cover isn't that cool to me.
Let's take a look. Yeah,
Kirk Canos' face. And then Karner Jax with a helmet face, and then the girl in the front wearing more clothes in the cover than she does in the book.
Right.
Which I find kind of odd that they drew differently.
Well, you have to keep the parents from confiscating.
Buying the book for the kids.
Right, yes.
Like, they're not going to open the book. It's okay. We just got to make sure the cover looks good.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, no, I always judge a comic. I mean, everyone judges a comic by the cover. That's what's going to draw your attention to the book.
Right, yeah. And so this we're batting about an average of half the covers are good, half of them are okay.
I don't know, that first one, I really want that book to hang on my wall right now, so.
It could be yours on eBay for a low price of $6 plus shipping.
It's tempting. I haven't pulled up to. It is tempting to order one.
Right. Well, you could treat yourself one of these days.
But for me, part of the fun with comics was finding comics.
Right, yeah.
That was always my fun, was going somewhere and finding them randomly as you're searching through a box.
Yeah.
Which, of course, I don't really do anymore, unfortunately, but that was the real fun for me.
Yeah, exactly. It's the hunt. Yeah. The thrill of finding that special thing that's priced at $1,
Yes. But no, I trust me, I was thinking about, this might not be a bad idea to pick up. Like, put on my wall, look really cool, because that first cover is something else.
The minute, how it always happened with me is the minute you buy it online, the next week you'll find it in a box for like 50 cents or something. So.
Well, not when you don't go to comic shows anymore.
Right, yeah.
And this issue kind of starts off with the rebels being at a new base because they had to flee their old. Are they still at the old base? And they're about. I think they're about to flee. They're
still on this planet. The name Phaedra, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're like, who tipped off the Imperials? Mirith, was that her name? God, Mirith and the Trandoshan are discussing. Well, who could have been the spy if it wasn't Kir Kanos? Oh, Siddiq, that's his name.
I think it's he figures it out because you see the old guy who is the spy drive off, and then he kind of like you have a panel, just his eyes staring at him. So
that's how you know. That's your comic symbol for I figured out your secret.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because the guy goes and talks to the Imperials to tell them where they're going, and then Meredith and the Trandoshan are waiting for the old man at his house, and then he gets murdered. Yeah, so he tries to run. Yeah, he deserved it.
I mean, that's dark. That's kind of like Andor level stuff. Like,
yeah, that is.
That's all the traitors.
Yeah, that did kind of remind me of Andor. And I mean, speaking of dark, the next part is dark too, where they know that what the guy had said. So then the woman Meredith puts on a cloak, goes to his ship, and then gets captured by the Imperials. Yeah. And after you see her captured, one of the next things you see is you're chained up, about to be tortured.
Right. Yeah.
So it gets a little dark.
Yeah, it does. He's a bad guy, so he has to torture him with some weird electric rod, some magical rod of some kind.
It looks like electric fire, for lack of a better term. It was weird, but I was just like, I was like, what I didn't understand, she's like, I will never tell you where Kir Kanos is. Like, why the fuck do you care so much?
I guess because, he helped them out. He saved their lives. He helped out that little band of followers, so.
Yeah, I don't know. I just found it weird, like, you don't need to do this.
Or maybe she has some hidden feelings for Kanos.
Maybe she did at one point, not at the end of this comic.
Right.
I don't know, I just thought it was just... I was like, I was not expecting to get that dark to see her get tortured.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty upsetting.
Mm-hmm. And then I do like where the stormtroopers go to the guy's house, and they open the door, and the guy's dead body is there, and there's a bomb sitting next to him. They're like, oh
yes.
They just get blown up.
Yeah,
and then he kind of does... So Connor Jax kind of does a Tarkin thing where he says that, he'll destroy their base and kill all the rebels. They don't tell him, if she doesn't tell him where Kir Kanos is.
Not destroy the planet, really,
Oh, that's what he said? Destroy the planet?
Yeah, he's like, Oh,
I see, yeah.
What can a Star Destroyer do to an unshielded planet? I have 2 Star Destroyers at my disposal.
Okay, and then that's when she tells him where he is, and then he goes, okay, begin the bombardment anyway.
Right, exactly, yeah. He's an evil guy.
Oh, no, he says he'll do the attack, and then she tells him to stop, and then he just does the attack anyway.
Right, yeah. And then he's like, well, I will keep one under my bargain, and you think he's about to order her dead, but he's like, go. You can
That's
go.
what I thought was too, because he has a guy with a knife, you see a guy, he just cuts the ropes, which I found just weird why he just like, okay, you can leave. But
of course, he wants to follow her.
So I smiled at this part when you see her walking and you see one of the spies following her, which is the spy from A New Hope.
Right, yeah.
I don't know why, but I really like that character. I had a figure of him.
Yeah, exactly. He's very interesting. He's like, I don't know if you can't quite tell if that's a snout or if that's like a mask or something. He's just a very interesting looking guy.
Yeah, I always thought that character was so cool, and I love the fact that they brought it back.
Right. I think that's just one of the great things about Star Wars is that everybody has their favorite little side characters who are on screen for like 3 seconds, but they're like, that's my guy.
Mm-hmm.
We don't even know their names, in the movies or whatever, ancillary materials you'll figure out. But like, that's why everybody called them Snaggletooth or like, Hammerhead guy or whatever. Well,
speaking of that, I've been watching way too much Pawn Stars lately, and they had a guy bring in a Play-Doh set from Return of the Jedi, and he's like, oh, it's got Crumb on the cover. I think Crumb is the name. Salacious Crumb. And the guy at Pawn Stars was like, oh, you wouldn't know. It's not named in the movie. You got to be a real nerd to know that. And I'm like, you asshole. I'm like, look at what you guys do. Like, you asshole.
He's not wrong. However, I feel like there's tiers of nerds. Like, Salacious Crumb is, you can be a regular Star Wars fan and know that. But if you know the name of Snout Guy, he has a name which I can't remember off the top of my head. But if you know his name,
Star Wars nerds, though. So.
Yeah, exactly.
I just thought it bothered me, and I'm like, yes, the characters aren't, but there's so many things where the characters aren't named in something, and you absorb it in one way or the other. But I guess so
I'm gonna find his name just so I can. Oh, Garindin Ez Zavor. Wow. Otherwise known as Long Snoot. Okay. See, they just name characters based on their physical characteristics, which is not okay. You know,
Yeah,
you can't just name someone Snaggletooth.
as we said when we watched some of the prequel stuff, there's a few racial stereotypes there.
Right.
So
It's okay because they're aliens. It's fine.
That's what George Lucas thought. I do like how the Trandoshan ends up knocking out the spy that she was being followed, and then then they're sending their own rebel soldiers up against these people that came to help them. Oh no, these are people that came to help them, aren't they?
Yeah.
This is Rogue Squadron.
Wedge shows up, so we get great. You know, always love to see the B-wing in action.
I thought of you when I saw that because I remember as a kid, you like that.
The B-wing, the rare fighter, you don't really see in Return of the Jedi, but you don't really see it in the video games, at least the older video games. But now you see it. You also see the E-wing, which is from Dark Empire as well. Again, another thing they got from the vehicles book.
I mean, that's
you see
cool,
the B-wings.
though.
Yeah.
I mean, sell more toys, sell more books, but either way,
it was a toy as well. It's a rare toy, but you can find it out there for money.
It's just a cool thing to do. To, like, you know, here we're going to take these books. You know, we're going to take a book with these different vehicles, and we're going to draw them so people can see them and people can get excited for them.
Yeah, you know, I used to draw Star Wars comic books. You know, from this time period, and I used that book as a reference myself to be like, I want to draw this weird fighter that's from this. That wasn't the movies, but was from this book. So I know the feeling, although this person had more skill and talent to draw these, but I know the feeling.
And also wasn't 13-year-old at the time.
I think probably try 10 years old. You know?
Okay, so you see, it's not your fault. You were a child.
Yes,
This guy was not.
He was a professional artist. But yes, the Rogue Squadron comes, and you see the B-wing, you know, fight off the Star Destroyer, and oh God, okay, I'm looking through this.
It isn't until the next issue when you see Wedge.
Right, okay. But you know they're coming. You
just get the one page of the Rebels, and then the guy saying, Rebel Squadron, let's go.
Okay, I'm jumping ahead of ourselves.
You're fine.
But I see, yes, you get Rogue Squadron attack. Yes.
I like that. I always like the idea of Rogue Squadron. I know Rogue Squadron also was a comic, too, for a while, I think. Okay, I never read any of it, but I've heard... Every so often I look up Star Wars Dark Horse stories you should read in Rogue Empire, or Rogue Squadron always comes up.
I've read a couple of them, and some, you know, they're pretty fun. Again, it was one of those series that doesn't focus on Luke Skywalker, really. They focus on, you know, other characters. You get to see how the larger universe plays. And they always go on like some commando mission or something.
Which is nice. I mean, that's one thing that made this book fun was, again, no Luke, no Jedis, no Sith, just people.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? I mean, yes, Corner Jax is Force sensitive, but he's not a Sith. He's just a guy that can move a few rocks.
Exactly, yeah.
And the fifth cover, this is another nice-ass cover. This is the one with Corner Jax in his red helmet, black suit, and then black stormtroopers all around him.
That's a good cover. Yeah,
that is.
It's really good.
And I really do like the stuff with Rogue Squadron like you're talking about, where you see them attacking, and then at the same time you also see Meredith and the Trandoshan steal a ship. And then shortly after that, you see a giant Executioner-style, you know, Star Destroyer with two Rebel signs painted on it.
Yeah. That was Lusankia, which was they had the X-Wing novels as well. There were like 9 or 10 books from this time period that focused on Rogue Squadron. And in one of the books, Lusankia was the Emperor's escape ship on Coruscant that he built under the planet. So like if Coruscant ever got invaded, he would just get in this thing and it would fly up. And that happened in one of the X-Wing books. Anyway, it happened in one of the X-Wing books and the Rebels captured it.
Okay. Well, I knew it wasn't the one from Return of the Jedi because that didn't get captured. That went.
In the old canon, there were only like a couple Super Star Destroyers, and this was one of them that was built under. It was supposed to be the Emperor's private escape ship, and it got turned into a prison or something.
I can buy that because the Emperor, you know, seems like that type of character that would have always had a backup plan.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. But at some point, the Rebels capture it. I don't remember exactly how, but they capture it, and then and now, of course, you see it with the symbols, which is great. So.
I was a little confused. I'm like, wait, an Executioner? Because the first, well, I guess, you would have seen a 2-page spread had I been looking at this at a real book that would have connected it to. In my version, they are not connected. So I was like, oh, but.
Yeah, 2-page spread. Yeah.
Because I'm reading an old scan copy.
Right, yeah.
Someone on the internet. And then you see Corner Jax shows up with his special stormtroopers to board the Imperial Star Destroyer that's there. You end up seeing some weird stuff that Oh, okay, I see what happened. I forgot. Like, okay, so Connor Jack is leaving on his own ship, and then they take in a shuttle.
Yeah.
Okay, they take in a shuttle that they thought the other guy, Kirk Hanos, was on. That's what it was. The other Star Destroyer did.
Yeah, but it turns out it's been sabotaged. It has a droid that's, what's it, a mess hall droid that's piloting the ship?
Yeah.
And he's like, the main course is about to be served, and the main course is a bomb.
He just blows up the ship. Oh, no, that was the ship that Connor Jack's on, but he got off just in time and flies away.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and at the same time, you have Meredith and the Trandoshan get into what was Kirk Hanos' ship and fly off into space towards all the battle.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what's going on. Oh, yeah, because what happened is, now I remember, Connor Jax goes to the other planet where Kirk Hanos is, and they pick up Kirk Hanos' ship, and then it blows up. Okay, because Kirk Hanos went back to the planet where they trained to have their final fight.
If I'm not mistaken, the trick of we're setting a shuttle and it has a bomb in the shuttle has been used before. So it's kind of like an old trope. I forget if it was one of the Star Wars comics. It might have been in one of the Thrawn books or something.
It's an old trope in general, though. Trojan horse.
Yeah, but it's an oldie but a goodie. It always
I enjoyed it.
Out of my face.
I wasn't complaining during this book.
Right.
I really like this next scene when Connor Jack gets to the temple and he just sends all his stormtroopers there, and he knows they're not going to succeed, but he's like, they might tire him out for me.
Right. Yeah.
Like, it just shows you how evil he is, too. He's like, fuck these guys.
Everything is expendable. Everyone's expendable to him.
I do like seeing Kirk Hanos just taking these people out left and right. And you do see him, I think, get injured or almost injured, but like he's just fighting them and just killing all these like elite stormtroopers.
Yeah. And they don't say what they are. Like, they're not dark troopers or like death troopers. I guess maybe wouldn't they call this type of thing death troopers in the new canon or something? I don't know.
Yes, the personal guard of the Admiral would be the new canon. Rogue One, Moff Gideon has them. Yeah, I think they're called Death Troopers.
Yeah. It seems like that's a kind of thing with Kirk Hanos has kind of a Death Trooper type thing.
Yeah, that's a fair way to put it.
Yeah.
And you have some stuff going on with Meredith talking with Wedge and that she wants to go to Yonshore, wherever the planet that Kirk Hanos is at. Yeah,
that's the planet that they trained on with the pit. Back in the old day. It's now a desolate rock.
I do like how the pit is an Imperial sign.
Yeah, they love putting that thing everywhere.
I do like the last panel is Kirk Hanos waiting in the circle, and then Connor Jack just walks up to him so they can have their duel.
Oh, yes. I see it now.
It's very cool. Like, this book did a lot of good job with, like, just last pages.
Yeah.
So I was definitely impressed. And this brings us to issue 6.
Right.
I don't care for this cover either. It could be cool if you just didn't have his ugly face on the cover. So you have Connor Jackson, his helmet and his outfit with his blade above Kirk Hanos, who's on the ground without a mask.
Yeah, it's Kirk Hanos in these covers. It looks like very much like I don't know, I want to say Val Kilmer or something, but it's like definitely like a model was used. I mean, not that Val Kilmer's bad looking, but it just looks like he doesn't look as rugged. He looks like he should look more rugged, and I feel like he could have like had half his face exposed or something, like a broken mask.
Just had the mask on would have been fine.
Right.
The mask is cool.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason why these one-time characters got toys and got a whole damn comic series. 3 comic series, to be exact. So, there's a reason. It's not because they didn't wear a mask. It's because they look cool with the mask.
Yeah.
I really got a kick out of, like, the way this fight starts, and most of this issue is just them going back and forth and fighting.
Yeah, it is.
At one point, Kirk Hanos is winning. He has him, like, falling down the pit, and then just when you see the guy use the Force and hit him with a rock. So there's some cool stuff.
Yeah, there is some cool stuff. And, kind of the counter story is that there's like a chubby assassin who's kind of desperate to kill, he's like Connor Jackson's backup plan is to have this guy, is a Commander Chef or something, is have this guy like climb up and snipe.
Yeah, and then he gets shot in the face.
But you're like, come on, man. Just the way they draw him is like this. He kind of reminds me of Dennis Nedry or something from Jurassic
Yeah, they even put like moles on his face and stuff. They just really go for that stereotype.
It's like, come on, like you wouldn't have this guy be a commando, Sorry, but he'd be better off, in the IT department or something, You
didn't
not
say the
to
magic
be,
word.
Not to stereotype him, but you want kind of an athletic person to be your snipers. That's all I'll say. But
still, whenever people have computer issues in my life, I always go, People do not appreciate it.
Didn't say the magic word.
I did that to somebody one day, looked at me like, what the fuck? I'm like, how do you not know this reference? Like, come on. So you have some political stuff, or maybe not political, but you have some of the rebels talking with Wedge Wedge on the ship, but it didn't seem important to me.
It does not necessary to the plot, really. It's
I just like seeing them fight because you get a lot of cool panels of them fighting. And of course, Kirk Hanos has to lose his mask because you got to show off the hero.
Yeah.
So he's not faceless, I guess. And this is when the commando is going to shoot him, but then the Trandoshan snipes the guy, and you have a scene where you see a hole in his head with the blood dripping down, which is kind of graphic too. Yeah, there's some kind of graphic stuff in this book. It's PG-13 level violence, I'll say that. Yeah. I do like how, as the fight progresses, Meredith shows up, and then Kirk Hanos does eventually stab Connor Jackson. And I like how they're like, don't kill him, we need him. And this is when the Trandoshan, which I cannot remember his name, gets a little too runs in to try to stop him and gets murdered. Sadit, yeah. I mean, again, this guy is a fucking murderer. Like, why are you lunging at him? Like, you're gonna survive? Because he didn't mean to kill him, I don't think, but he got in the way. So he's like, nope, I gotta kill this guy. Yeah. I mean, I get it. Like, I mean, this guy was like an emperor was in charge of a whole squad. Like, he's gonna have information, but it shows that, vengeance. And he's really, Kirk Hanos' vengeance is he betrayed the emperor. So, like, I have to kill him. It's not like he did bad things. No, he's not a hero. That's the whole thing. No. Like, this guy is like, I'm still serving my emperor. That was one of the worst people ever to live. Right. But he killed him, so I don't care. Yeah. I mean, I do like the point of it to show, like, this guy is not a hero. This guy is, by him killing Sadit, you really kind of cement that he's not a good person. Right, yeah. Even if it wasn't quite intentional. I mean, it's ambiguous. You made it seem like maybe he didn't want to do it, but he had to do it because his goal was to... Yeah, kill Connor Jackson. This one even says other people to kill, and then he leaves her there, and then when the rebels go to pick her up, that's when she says, I'm going to hunt him down. Yeah. I will be his executioner, are the last words you see. So, it's very 90s. Yeah, very 90s, And I feel like, there's some... I like the last couple images. The last couple of illustrations are good. When you see Mirith, that's a good... The artistry in this book kind of fluctuates between some of it's good and, some of it's kind of weird looking. But it wasn't bad. It didn't draw... God, was it Shadows of the Empire or Dark? Or one of those books drew Leia terrible. Or was it Heir to the Empire? That I bitched about a whole bunch. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure... There was a time where I did not like the drawings of Leia. I think it was Dark Empire. I think maybe you had a problem with the way she was portrayed in that one. I can't remember. It's been a while. It's been a while, yeah, too. But so, yes, everybody's dead. Kirk Hanos goes off. He's gone back to hiding until he's ready to strike again. There's nowhere in the galaxy he can hide from me. Oh, yeah, because he saved them, but he killed one person, so now she's going to hunt him down. I mean, I'm glad they didn't make it a love story. Right. So I am okay with that. Like, and it definitely has me curious enough to read Crimson Empire 2, which came out a year later. Right. I'm definitely interested to read that now. So I went from having no interest to being intrigued. Yeah, I've never read number 2. I don't recall ever reading it. I think there's a third one even. There's a third one too. The third one came out a decade after the second one, though. Wow. Yeah. It took them that long to finally get it written. I was reading a little bit about it, and I'm like, yeah, a decade later, we finally got it done. They always love trilogies in Star Wars land. Mm-hmm. Because trilogies work. I mean, this thing felt like a standalone story. Like, the 6 issues you read it, like, it worked as a complete story. Right. I mean, I'm curious to read another one. I feel like it did wrap up. Yeah, from what I know, I like the idea of a former Royal Guard and, like, the training and the, complications that go with that. And I don't know if part 2 deals with that or if just like a standard, vigilante story. Guy on the run or whatever. So if it doesn't deal with that, I'm less interested in it. If it's just like a standard crime tale, underworld tale, rather than because the hook of this book is he's the Royal Guard. He has the red uniform, and unless the second book talks about that, I don't know if I have as much interest. So because that's what got me into this book is that I can tell you the publisher's summary of the second book. Which doesn't seem like, from me reading it's a spoiler of anything. Following the death of Imperial Guard turncoat Connor Jackson at the hand of the last guard, Kirk Hanos The Galactic Empire suddenly finds itself devoid of a leader, and an interim council is assembled to rule the Empire until a new emperor can be selected. But when council members become targets for assassination, Kanos becomes a prime suspect and again stands at the center of a storm. That was my attempt at the Clone Wars voice. Didn't work out very well.
That's good. That's a good try. We'll say that.
I'm curious to read it, though. I'm definitely on board now to see more where this goes.
Right.
And in the cover, like the promotional image, Jabba or a Hutt is on the cover. So
could he be the real mastermind behind the killing of the Imperial candidates?
Yes, as he's eating his frogs. All right. I think that should bring us to Shelf Stack or Box. And Peter, why don't you go first?
Well, I like this comic, but it's not my favorite Star Wars comic. And, I don't have as much connection to it and doesn't have as much readability to it. So I think I would put it in the stack. I might look at it again another 10 years, 15 years or so. But I like other ones like Shadows of the Empire, Dark Empire, the other empires I'm more of a fan of, and I'm more of ones to revisit. It did have good themes, and I think I liked that it was refreshingly different take on the Star Wars universe, where you have a person who's not a good guy, and you have characters who are very peripheral to the main characters be talked about. So I did appreciate that. And yeah.
I'm also going to put it on the shelf because I really enjoyed it, but I'm also a sucker for the Royal Guard. So there is that. I mean, I don't think I would read it again anytime soon, but I definitely would tell people that you should read, at least you should read it. Like if you're a Star Wars fan, because that fucking cover is just really grabbed me enough. And it was fun enough. Like it was interesting to see more. And if you're somebody that wants a alternate timeline to what happened after Luke kills Palpatine and not where Luke becomes a Jedi and goes into hiding for a while, even though that was the original pitch. This gives you more story. And I liked it.
You know what I was thinking is that the fall of the Guard is a lot like the fall of the Jedi. And it's like somebody just orders them oral. It's like Carter Jackson's own Order 66. It's just that all these are bad guys who are getting killed as opposed to the good guys of the Jedi.
That's fair.
I know Order 66 wasn't around then, but it's kind of similar to it's a purge. It's what you call a purge.
Yeah, I mean, there were multiple purges. Now, I mean, this is non-canon, but we have the Mandalore purge, you have the purge of the Jedi, now you have the purge of the Royal Guards to talk about.
Right, yeah.
So, I don't know, I enjoyed it. Like, I read this really quick, and I could easily read this in a day. I didn't because I was tired, but it was good.
Yeah, I do like it. It's just not one that I have as much fun as other ones, so. But I'm glad to revisit it. I was really glad to read it after all these years once again.
I'm glad that I gave you an excuse to.
Yes, thank you.
All right. And Peter, where can people find you at?
Once again, I'm on Twitter or X or whatever you call it these days, at PeterVP. I'm going to call it Twitter. And you can find my random musings there. Or if you'd like to read my book, it's called The Fifth Civilization, and it's available on Amazon for Kindle or physical paperback copy.
Which is what I have. I apparently also bought it digitally too, by the way. So my wife did on her Kindle.
Nice.
That's what she was reading at one point. She's going to go back and read it again. Oh, right.
Nice.
And definitely you'll see a link in the show notes to Peter's book. Definitely go check it out. It's actually really good. And I am biased, but it also is really good. So, but I am biased. I will put that out there. And if you enjoyed this episode, there are a ton of other Star Wars episodes we've done on the show. You can go right to our Podbean website, type in Star Wars, type in Batman, type in Zelda. You'll find episode. Even type in random shit. You'll find stuff. We do comics, movies, TV shows, whatever the hell I convince people to talk about with me. So definitely go check out our giant catalog, over 500 episodes of Keep My Mom Phone. If you want to support the show, we do have Patreon with the little dog. You can vote in our Patreon poll. You'll see a link in the show notes for that. Every month we have different polls. You get to vote and alter the show. We do have a Discord. You'll see a link in the show notes. Please join that and chat with us. And also want to give a shout out to my awesome intro and outro, courtesy of Helena at Hell Has Free. You can follow her on TikTok. And want to give a shout out to my buddy Bill Tucker, who started his own podcast, The Gamer Looks At 40. Definitely go check him out also. And I think that's... Oh, yeah, and please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and on YouTube, audio only, and on Threads. I'm on Threads now. You can follow us on there. I think that's everything I need to say, so we will see you guys all next time. Bye, everybody.